You need to turn on the other one.
Turn on the other one. Turn on the other one. Did you turn on the other one? So, yeah.
I'll broadcast. So all these years, earlier in my life, I wondered if my mother was still around. And I felt like that was always, when you're adopted, people always ask me, what's that like? You love your adopted parents, or they ask you all these strange questions because they're trying to find out. They don't know. And the only thing missing in my life at the time, I didn't know that the only thing missing in my life at the time was my mother. My parents had just passed away. They never got to see, very much of my success, especially in the last 10 years. And so, my daughter convinced me to take my DNA test, and come to find out that my mother is still alive. And she was alive in San Angelo, Texas, where we would go and pray at the beautiful San Angelo on Sunset Street that she lived on. So everyone, I'd like to introduce you to my mother, Regina Hernandez. Mom, would you stand up? Thank you for the life that you've given me. I can't tell you what an adventure it's been. I had wonderful parents. I really did. I wouldn't have had the success in my life without two very loving, giving, caring, sacrificing parents. So we'll be meeting Sister Carmen here later today, or maybe the next time we come over. Can you all hear me still? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to look at approximately 40-something slides. This presentation is done in two halves. The first one is to orient you with the position, begging your pardon, position the mission along the side of the river. And the second half is to address the issue of the annular eclipse that's coming this year over the path of these missions. Okay? We know from our research that the missions were placed deliberately in the path of this eclipse. The conclusive evidence I can't share with you today because I have an archaeologist and an astrophysicist that's helping me write a paper. We're going to publish it. So forgive me for not giving you that conclusive evidence, but I feel that it's important that we publish the information. But before we do that, I'm going to make sure that the Mission Indian Descendants group, that's Margot and Diane, that they get that information first so they can see that it's real, that this is really happening, and that our ancestors planned this out 300 years ago in advance. This is no joke, folks. That's how brilliant they were. And in my opinion, the joke is on the Spaniards. So I'd like to introduce a couple of people here before I get started. Victor, would you get up and introduce yourself, please, sir? Don't need to embarrass yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Victor Olguín, and I live in Dallas. I've been a student in Bulgaria for the past 8 years. I was born in Coahuila, Mexico. I've been here in Mexico for the last 30 years.
And your office?
I hold an office position in the state of Coahuila for the indigenous government of Coahuila. We have just been recognized in Coahuila as one of the native communities, original from Coahuila. Last December.
Hello, Yase. Navajo dinner. So, jag är tjej för det kan känns som att det snart för det ni vars team with Anita Shale. Could ego dinner so I'm Navajo, an astrophysicist from I'm a PhD candidate. Currently have my master's from the University of Texas at San Antonio. I'm currently studying astrophysics. So, yeah. Cody Clyde, CODYCLY.
Where are you? So you're looking down, you don't want to catch you eye to eye. Please, sir, calmly introduce yourself.
I'm Tom Castillo. I'm with the Pakahua Tribe of Texas. I'm a cultural preservation officer. I've known Gary for a little bit. We've done a few things together, and thanks to him, I've been able to enrich my knowledge and my information on a lot of things that Gary has come. Thanks to him, we've also been able to go to Pakahua and do things out there, and being able to tie in a whole bunch of stuff. So as a cultural preservation officer, all this is really, really important to us, especially for the tribe. So I thank Gary for inviting me and for us and to be part of this.
Two of our team members, our science team members for the last couple of years. Janet Stock, our archaeologist. And Joe Perez, our geologist, our illustrious geologist, Joe Perez. All right, let's get down to business now. This is the, well, I'm going to call it Nabaco in our language, Coahuiltecan. It's our journey. But it's known as the White Shaman mural. And anthropologists are connecting this painting with Mesoamerican cultures in Mexico. I know some of the anthropologists that have been working on this, and their study was specifically in Mexico. There's a rule under the study of this painting not to look for anything in Texas, even though it's within the Texas area. So what is a Mesoamerican culture, Mesoamerican prophecies, Mesoamerican pantheons of gods? Why is it within the state of Texas? You know, Mesoamerica means Mexico, the Mayas, the Aztecs, the Olmecs, the Olmecs. It's a mystery still. Right back to this. First of all, the story is that the story is about one day there was a boy, and 5 ancestors set out to go find the first sunrise, and they encountered a deer over here. I meant to put it. A deer right here. The sun and the deer rode together towards the east to find the first sunrise. But I'll show you a little bit more on that. Our study, Joe Diaz and Janet Stock, was to show that this portion here, this black dot here, this line, this portion right here, we showed in a paper for the American Archaeological Society. Society for American Archaeology, and showed that those 4 dots in that squiggly line were the edge of the Balcones Escarpment and the 4 fountain springs along I-35, Martin Springs, St. Martin Springs, Omaha Springs, and San Antonio Springs. So we published our work, myself, Joe, and Eric Schrader published our work last year in the Bulletin for Texas Archaeological Society, showing that the White Shaman mural is a map of Texas, 2,000-year-old map of Texas, and only the Babylonians have been given credit for something like that anywhere in the world. Not anymore. Thank you, Joe. That was brilliant. Your part of the paper was brilliant. So, the creation story. And I have to read this. Please forgive me. Professionally speaking, you're not supposed to be reading what people can see it for themselves. But anyway, in the Nahuatl version of the creation story, The myth ends with the birth of the sun, while the Huichol myth equates the birth of the sun with the birth of Peyote. Both myths begin when the world is in a state of perpetual darkness and chaos. Five primordial ancestors undertake this journey to the mountain in the east where the sun could rise. This is by Dr. Carolyn Boyd, and she's describing what she sees in the rock art. The first sunrise, the first day, the beginning of the universe, at the moment that these spirits of the underworld develop fingers and toes, we learn how to count. And we learn on our own, without help from Arabs, we learned calculus on our own 2,000 years ago. Actually, it goes further back. If you take this story literally about the journey to the first day in the mountain where it would take place, this would have been your view 44 BC, 6,000 years ago. The story that's being told in this painting, like I said, take it literally. This is your view at Twin Buttes in San Angelo, Texas. By the way, we've been going to Twin Buttes for a while to pray to the sunrise. And I noticed a couple of years ago, see this pole right here? It's painted purple. When we started going there to pray at that pole in the mornings, people started taking notice. Sheriff's department would come by, people going to the marina to take off to go fishing in the morning, they took notice of it too. Within just a few years, the owner of the property decided to paint that pole purple. Does anybody know what that means? You grew up in the ranchos, do you know what that means? You cross this line and we're going to shoot you. Just to let you know. So a pilgrimage, a journey of a pilgrim, especially going to a shrine or a sacred place, the course of life on earth. I like that very much because our lives are pilgrimages to our new beginnings or the rest of our lives or spiritual lives. Maybe a place in heaven. Maybe come back as a German Shepherd or like cows. Hindu people believe they come back as cattle, right? I don't want to be a cow. In Mexico, the Huichol do their pilgrimage from the ocean over to the place called Quemado in Real de 14, where the first sunrise took place, according to the Huichol people. And there are five leaders, and they tie themselves together with a rope. These 5 leaders, and they go to the bathroom, everything. They don't do it themselves until they get to the peyote gardens. They gather peyote and make them home. Even then, they're still tied together all the way back to their centro ceremonial. So that's one pilgrimage in Mexico. Here's another one. The Pancas. In 1924, we're seen over by the Blue Hole area where 5 Pancas, where they said that during the peyote collecting season of their trip from Ponca City, that they had this to the Laredo territory, 4 places. They had to stop in 4 places to stop. And one of those places was the springs there at Incarnate Word, the Blue Hole. So here the other 4 places are the springs that Marcus Springs, Coahuila Springs, and San Antonio Springs. So now we have evidence of pilgrimage through this region, which shows that this icon in the rock art that shows the 4 springs along I-35 or the Vacunas Department is real. The people still do it. Comanches still come through here. They'll pick me up, or I'll join them at the Blue Hole, and we'll go down to the gardens and pick medicine and have a ceremony on grandmother's property. They do it, I do it with them. People from Canada do it. Folks, you don't know how many thousands of Native American tribes, federally recognized tribes, come to San Antonio every year. They're all around you. They're sitting with you at Quinceañeras. They're shopping at the mall. They love, what's that place in Quinceañeras? Market Square. Oh, they love Market Square. So, we got 5 primordial beings that journey to the first sunrise. We have 5 Huichol, and we have 5 Ponca. Right? So here's the white shaman mural, or Napaco. The 5 primordial beings are here. Is that clear? Here's, of course, first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one, and they all have something in common. They have red heads, elongated bodies, and torches as arms. Right? There's 5 of them. And these 2 here are to the left of this white thing of head. And these guys are on the right. 2 to the left and 3 to the right. Okay. 2 to the left, 3 to the right. 2 in the eastern part of the painting. The eastern, 3 in the western. So 2 to the left, 3 to the right, 2 in the east, 3 in the west. I've added this line right here, this white line here. I've added this right here. I made it green for a reason. Okay. This is according to Dr. Carolyn Boyd. The reason why I'm citing her is because she wrote this down before I had a chance to do it. So I have to cite her first. A sinuous white and black line that traverses the entire length of the mural from right to left, that superimposed across the 5 primordial ancestors and reversed the flower road, the path of the sun, the umbilicus, by which the pilgrims traveled to Dawn Mountain where the beauty grows in the world began. All right? We were fortunate in 2019 to see exactly what that was represented in the painting. So the 5 primordial ancestors are the 5 visible planets in the sky. Saturn, Venus, the Milky Way. Remember the 2 to the left are right here. They're divided here to the left and to the right. This is the Milky Way right here, dividing the 2 to the left and Jupiter, Mercury, and Mars right. Y'all see that? 2019. We knew that was coming for years. And we're excited about that day. We had a ceremony. So here's what the painting is telling us. That the squiggly line tying all the ancestors together is the ecliptic. The ancestors are Saturn, Venus, Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, the Milky Way. 2 on the left, 3 on the right, 2 in the east, 3 in the west. Is everybody still with me? Okay. So you've got 5 primordial beings, 5 Zechon, 5 Ponca, 5 visible planets. What could possibly be more exciting? Except that the missions are along the river of San Antonio the same way. 2 to the left of the river, 3 to the right. The 2 far missions south of here, 2 doors facing the east and 3 doors facing the west. That's not a coincidence. We know through our research that that was done on purpose. So, here are your missions, and here are the planets that each of them represents. Mission Espada, well, Saturn is represented by Mission Espada, San Juan Venus, Concepcion Mercury, Valero Mars, and San Jose Jupiter. In that order, in that exact order, Saturn, Venus, Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, just like it is in the painting. Okay? And just let me remind you folks, I understand, this is research, but I'm also indigenous. And so please take my word, if you please, as a researcher and published scholar, and as an indigenous person. Okay? Try not to separate the two. And I'm not the only one who knows these things. You know, I have elders up north in Oklahoma and Canada, and we talk about these things from time to time. Hey, how's it going down there? How's it going there? This isn't strange. Not to us. So, here's the template for that arrangement. It was tough finding this day. It was tough. I had to look through thousands of days and weeks and months to come to this conclusion that on May 1st, 1746, the planets were aligned in the ecliptic the way the missions were laid out along the river. Mars on the outside of the ecliptic, the Alamo on the outside, Concepcion on the outside, San Juan on the outside, Jupiter on the inside, just north of San Juan, and Espada on the inside. Could not find this at any other time except in 2081 that will repeat again. That this planetary arrangement, the way the missions are laid out along the river, won't occur again until 2081. That's what 355 years. So they were very specific. Something that doesn't happen too often. They weren't that being chiflados, you know. They're saying, no, this is 355 years out, and we're going to put it down. I don't care the next generation. That's how we're going to do it, because that's our law. That's astronomical law. Interestingly enough, there were 6 missions along the San Antonio River. There were. Okay, but if you remember the date, May 1st, 1726, there's 5. Well, the 6th mission that would have been the 6th mission was San Antonio de Lujara. Okay. It says here that it thrived from 1722 to 1726. That's funny, because in 1726 you had the arrangement of the 5 missions, right? Or the 5 visible planets. Well, Pobrecito and Lujara got X'd out because, you know, because Pluto wasn't designated a planet. So I'm glad y'all got that. Yeah, so isn't that strange how the 6th mission just gets X'd out on the same year that the planets align along the sky, the way the missions are laid out? That's wild. So you got 5 primordial beings, 5 people, 5 continents, 5 visible planets, 5 missions. 2 to the left, 3 to the right, 2 facing east, 3 facing west. Take a break. Can we turn the lights on?
We're gonna take a quick, 10-minute break. Okay? If you haven't signed in, go see Rachel to sign in and get your name tag. But before everyone moves, the San Antonio Mission Indian Descendants Group is transitioning. It's been a very private thing for almost a year. And so we have now opened up for membership into the San Antonio Mission Indian Descendants Group. So if you have your pedigree, if you have your proof that you are a mission descendant, you are now able to join that private group. If you're not a mission descendant, hey, you can still come be a friend of the San Antonio Mission Indian Descendant. So if any of you are interested in that, please go see Rachel also in the back. She's got the application. If you've got questions, come and see me or come and see Marco, and we'll be happy to answer them. So come get pastries, coffee, go see Rachel. We're also getting orders for t-shirts. So, we're gonna break everybody up.
Yes, sir. What do you know about the giant skeleton Anything about that?
Can you just put it on pause?
No.
Just let it run.
Just let it.
Okay.
Well, in 1933, San Antonio was last used. I think it was out of Kingville. Found a 19-foot skeleton. Some of these giants had double rows of teeth and red hair. It's like very the same. It looked big. Had red hair. I'm just wondering if you know. There's various other, especially in the Four Corners area.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just don't remember.
Especially, you might not find it. American history books. It's the indigenous
United States, they never learn any. It's in their oral stories. Which, by the way, they would pick someone out at an earlier age, tell me stories they couldn't change nothing for. This or that, God. So that's the way they kept their history very accurate. So what I'm saying is that you might not find too much of this unless it was reference to especially in the mounds areas, like mounds and rock structures. That's where they found pretty interesting.
What are you wearing? Yeah, and yeah, like engineering coordinator. I have that meme with sending out meeting and custom 12 different people.
Okay. Wow, I wish it was this noisy at Brackenridge Park with all the birds. You know? What a travesty. Uh-oh.
Elders speaking. Elders.
So, well, that's better. I can hear that. I can tell that's better. Matilda and I, and let me just say this also, because I'm up here and I'm just a little nervous, just a little bit, but I'm getting more and more comfortable. But if it weren't for Matilda Torres, you guys, I wouldn't be standing here. You know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, my work was stagnant. I had done everything that I could within my power to get this information out to you. Okay? Everything. Grants, the whole thing. No one in the city of San Antonio was listening. Not even the indigenous communities were paying any attention to it. Probably because of me. Because I can be a very polarizing person. I'm very, I'll look you in the eye. If I know you well enough, I'll kiss you on the cheek. Some people don't like being touched. You know, but I'm a very loving person. People may not be comfortable with that about me. But in any case, I had a hell of a time getting it out there to the community, and it went flat. Nobody cared, nobody listened except me. So I want to thank you, Matilda, for all right, let's move on. This gets interesting as it goes, and just a little bit more complicated, so I'll take it slow. Wow, Mission Concepcion, the planet Mercury. It's known for its beauty, the fact that it's still standing. All the other missions fell except for this one, because it was made of the tufa rock. And it wasn't quarried from underground, it was quarried from the surface. You can get Joe Teas over here. He works for the Cherokee tribe of Oklahoma as a contractor. He's the man who makes things happen for their tribe. He can tell you exactly what tuba is, how it forms, how long it takes to form, and how big that massive, what would you call it, Joe? The massive rock that it was that created this.
Yeah, like mountain.
Yeah, massive. It's known for its double illumination on August 15, 2018. And please ask me about that. If you remember, ask me about it afterwards, after this presentation, because it's not a part of my presentation. So if you want to know a little bit about why that double illumination is there, I'll tell you. But just a hint, you see where the sunlight is touching the Assumption of Mary? Mary is the constellation of Virgo, the Virgin. Okay? Everybody got that? And underneath Mary is this annular eclipse. I've heard Father David talk about this eclipse, saying that when Jesus was crucified and was dying on the cross, that there was an eclipse over the area where Golgotha, where he died. And it was, from what I understand, that the Jews realized that they had just killed the Messiah. And there was even an earthquake, I think it was. And so there was an eclipse that took place. And I don't remember all of what Father David says about it, but I'm not going to put words in his mouth. But that's what I understand him telling me. I've also heard that the provenance of this painting is 1691. Any historians here that heard the same thing? Anybody? I was hoping there'd be somebody who would hear that before. Well, if that's the case, and if this is an annular eclipse, we can go back this right here. And you notice how it's thin on this end and it's thick on the other side? It's like your peanut butter and jelly sandwich just suddenly slid to the bottom. You see that? Or your Oreo is melted and it's got. Okay? Here we are. Other encounters of natives at spring localities along the Balcones Escarpment include a report made by Ferran de los Rios expedition in June of 1691. They encountered a large village of Payaya Nation at San Antonio Springs, as well as several thousand natives, including the Humano captain Juan Sabeata at San Marcos Springs later that month. Once again, these 4 fountain springs on the edge of the Balcones Escarpment come into play historically. This was part of our bulletin for Texas Archaeological Society. This is Eric Schrader's research, and I think he's citing Mariah F. Wade from her book, The Native Americans of the Balcones Escarpment. And they were like who corrected? All right. Well, what were they looking at? They were looking at this eclipse. Here it is over Mexico City, and you can see, you catch the edge over here. If I'm doing this correctly, maybe this was to them it was a partial eclipse. August 23rd, 1691. Just a month later after this, the mention of this expedition or this gathering was mentioned, you had this eclipse, August 23rd. But look at it. It looks like your MasterCard. You see things like that when you're doing this research over and over and over and over again, and you start to see things. You know, se te va la onda. And so, but that doesn't look at all like the eclipse underneath her feet, does it? But I'm sure her credit was really good. But however, before and after, you had a set of twin eclipses in 1683, well into the Entradas in Texas. And then in 1737, way into the building of the missions here in San Antonio, there were these twin eclipses. And Dr. Angela Speck, whom I'm writing this paper on the stuff that I told you that I can't share, I'm sorry. She sent me this graphic here of the one in 1731. These are all of the eclipses over this region in the 1730s. This is the one that we're looking at in 1737. See how it's right over Texas that morning. Right over Texas that morning. And if you look at both eclipses side by side, this one and this one, which one looks more like the one in the painting? The one on the right. So we know that these eclipses were taking place. We know that they saw them. We know that one of them may have wound up in the painting. And why was it so important to them? Why would they go through all that trouble, in this case, to put it in the painting underneath the Assumption of Mary? But they saw it. It was there. We know that they did because we have programs that can take us all the way back to San Antonio, Texas, and see what's happening in our skies. Okay? And there they are together in this painting. So eclipses are very, very important. I can tell you they still are important to our culture, our viewing culture, eclipses. I'll explain here in a little bit why. So yeah, everybody see that? And I was careful to put the image of the Assumption of Mary along the ecliptic like the actual and the date. Okay, and there's a date, March 1st, 1737. Sorry, I messed up the M there. So, I have a question. This is the kind of thing that gets underneath my skin. Because it takes thousands upon thousands of hours to compile this research. And you read through it all, and you read through it all, and you double check, and you triple check, and you check to make sure that you're not lying to yourself, and you're most certainly not going to lie to the public about what you're finding. Everything that you see up on the screen today, you can go and find yourself on your own. I haven't pledged any of this, but this is the way I've arranged it for you to try and understand the way that I see it. But that doesn't make me I didn't create this. They did. I didn't do it. Thank you for nodding like that. She's got a master's degree, man. Watch it. Question. We just talked about eclipses that took place in 1691, 1683. Over the right here, it says, a native connection to the Edwards Plateau region is a statement by Juan Sabieta, a Humano captain and resident of La Punta de los Rios, in the deposition to the governor of El Paso in 1683. Sabieta referred to the Concho River Valley in the West Texas as the homeland of the Humano people and the place where as many as 36 tribes gather to eat nuts and so forth. In his disposition, Sabieta also referred to the fact that ever since the 1650, the Spanish would travel to New Mexico. Sabieta, 1683, the same Humano captain is periodically mentioned later in the colonial accounts of 1683 and 1692. So there's your eclipse in 1683, and there's your eclipse in 1637. 1737, thank you, 1737. What bugs me is that when you read this history, you go back to this record of history, none of this text does it mention anything whatsoever about eclipses. Nothing. They leave it out. How can you leave something out like that that affects the people? How can you leave it out? Yeah, they gather along the balconies, got great delay, there was an eclipse. They left it out. The other thing that I learned while doing this research, look at this, May 1683, Halley's Comet is over our skies. You can bet on Halley's Comet, you can set your watch with it. But is it mentioned in the entradas, in the history? No. No, they don't mention it. They leave it out. How about 1758, near the height of the missions that are being built here in San Antonio? Halley's Comet. Any mention? Nothing. They don't mention it. They don't say nothing about it. Here's a big shock to me. December 12, 1531, Halley's Comet, on the night that the Virgin of Guadalupe appeared to Juan Diego. Nothing in the historical record. I'm trying to make a point here. Brother, I'm trying to make a point here. This Indian heard about it. But, me personally, I'm going to be a real nice guy. And I'm going to say leave history the way it is. new information that we've gathered, okay, it needs to be a part of the narrative, especially the mission and the descendants. It needs to be a part of our narrative. And we need to tell it to ourselves, remind ourselves, and go back along with me or on your own. Gather your own information. Get all your stuff and present it as such and say, this is our story. Please include it in the narrative. There's a World Heritage building somewhere out there across the road. There's every opportunity right now, because of World Heritage, to get this information into those institutions and say, this is our story. You know, T.R. Frienbach has told their side of the story. The indigenous people need to tell their side of the story. And it needs to be heard. All right, we're coming to our end. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Because there'll be more questions after this part. Yes, sir.
Comment.
Sure, comment.
You know what you were just discussing, what is industrial and being left out. You must understand that at that same time, near about that same time, Galileo was stuck in a dungeon.
Galileo was stuck in the dungeon for saying the same thing.
Yeah, he was stuck in a dungeon.
The Catholic Church did that to Galileo. Okay? That's wonderful. I mean, I'm sorry for Galileo. You know, really. But see, there are people out there that when you hear this, hear it for what it's worth, though, not because I'm saying it. Take a science, look it up yourself. Yes, sir.
You said the purpose of the painting was 1691.
That's what I've heard.
Oh, I was just suggesting, my suggestion, when you put the total eclipse on either side of it, it matched the one from 1737.
Yeah.
And where's that painting located today?
En Mission Concepcion.
And Mission Concepcion was established in 1731, so to me it would be more favorable towards 1737.
That's
if you
how-
can make that argument.
Thank you. You know, if when I put this presentation together, I watered it down quite a bit, and that was one of the things that I would have said. But thank you so much for doing
It's
it.
been a wonderful thing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's all fact. I'm not making this up. Just you gotta connect the dots, you know. All right. We've got some twins coming up. Annular eclipse twins. This year, October 14th, 2023, over the state of Texas. It's going to start at the west coast. It's going to come clear across America, across San Antonio, down into central Mexico, like an airplane. 54 years later, in 2077, you have a second one here. Just cutting the same swath 100 miles across next to the first one. See how close that is? Here and here. We know that the dividing line between those two is from San Angelo clear across Jacob's Well through San Marcos. Just like it is in the painting in the rock art. That line is cut clear across in the rock art. So let's move on. You see this character in the bottom right of the painting, he's upside down, and I'm pointing this trajectory line down into the underworld. Our geographic information systems tells us, and this is in our bulletin for Texas Archaeological Society, that this opening in the world where he's upside down going in is Jacob's Well. Jacob's Well is the entrance to the underworld according to South Texas, Northeast Mexican beliefs. If you've seen Jacob's Well when it's full, it's beautiful. If you see it now, it makes you sad. But this character here, he's upside down. He's got a black center in his head. He's got a yellow aura, identical to an annular eclipse. Okay, everybody with me? Daniel, I don't want to put you to sleep now. Okay. So, about this character, Dr. Carolyn Boyd says, the 12th motif described by Boyd is a collection of blah, blah, blah. Okay. The 5th jicarero, this guy. And its deity avatar, this guy. An upside-down red-bodied anthropomorph impaled with a dart. This latter figure is derived of the figure described in blah, blah, blah. The upside-down figure represents the god of the setting sun, or the snarer of the deer. The snarer of the deer. This guy right here, according to Boyd. Boy, she nailed that one. She nailed it. Associated with the setting sun. Well, where does that setting sun take place? Where could it possibly take place? In San Angelo, Texas, at summer solstice. You stand on this side of the lake, on Knickerbocker, and you're looking over the lake. That sun just comes, it goes across the sky like this, and it looks like it's going to go into the mountain here, but it gets to this point and it just drops down. So we know the geographic location of that setting sun. We know the geographic location of the snare of the deer. The eclipse that I'm identifying as the eclipse in the painting. So, and in that interpretation by Boyd, she says avatar, a manifestation of a deity released soul in a bodily form on earth, an incarnate divine teacher. So what is actually the avatar of the annular eclipse or the setting sun? It is the shadow that the eclipse will cast upon the earth, overhead, over our heads, over the missions, on its way to South America. The eclipse itself, the shadow, is the avatar. The shadow. That's a little more forward thinking on indigenous cultures. Shadows is where the sun is absent. Sunlight is where the ecliptic is. Very deep, meaningful thinking about what a shadow is, what shade is, or what direct sunlight is. Okay? Exactly 12 days later, on October 26th of this year, the planets Saturn and Jupiter on the inside of the ecliptic, and Venus, Mercury, and Mars on the outside ecliptic will align in the sky the same way the missions are laid out along the river. On October 26th, the planets will line up along the ecliptic just like the missions are along the river. That'll happen one more time in 2025, and then it won't happen again until 2081. So the Mission Indian descendants have two opportunities to claim this moment for themselves. Claim this moment. The planets are lined up along the river like our missions are along the sky, along the missions along the river. Eso es lo nuestro. We claim that moment. You know, this is Saturn, that's Venus, that's Jupiter, that's Mercury, that's Mars. Don't tell me any different. It's all lined up in the sky, just the way they are lined up along the river. Okay? So that's the end of my presentation. Yeah, because I'm thinking and nothing.
We don't make y'all wait to the end of his presentation, but this is your opportunity, and I think you have questions right over here.
Next year, there's gonna be an eclipse too, that crosses the entire country. It's gonna go right over this area. I think Kerrville is one of the
I'm sorry.
places. I think they're all booked. All the hotels around there, but have you done any research? You got insight?
Actually, Matilda was the one who figured that one out. It's in the painting too.
And that one is the total eclipse.
That's total.
Yeah, the one
But it
this
also
year is the
goes
annual.
across the entire country.
Yeah. It's like,
It has more spiritual meaning.
well, just a reminder, folks. Yes, when I say it's in the painting, we know because of the math. When we say the missions are along in the path of the eclipse, it's because of the mathematics. And I'm sorry once again, we're publishing that work, and you'll get to see it. You'll get to see it. I promise you'll get to see it. But the Mission Indian descendants are going to get to see it first. Yeah, you're welcome. Very conclusive, out of this world. You're staring right at you.
Anybody else have any questions? I know he gave a lot of material, so you're gonna get home and you're gonna say, oh, I was going to ask that.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned originally Dr. Carolyn Boyd.
Uh-huh.
How how early did she publish? And is she connected with you? Did you follow her research? How is that?
I was introduced to her, and she had some ideas about the rock art. We told, and now what ideas? And because at the time I was a caretaker of the peyote gardens, and I would have access to peyote culture, right?
Do you know what year that might have been?
Oh, that year, that was a 2009. 2009. And so when she introduced me to the painting, I was looking at it and said, well, I don't know what I'm looking at. You know, point something out to me. What is this? And she had pointed the 5 ancestors, and the underwatery world, and she pointed out the first sunrise. And I'm like, man, that sounded very familiar to someone like me who was sitting in a position that I had. And I was thinking, oh my God. All right. So a closer look at the painting. For the next couple of years, I took a geographical view look at it and said, these have to be locations. These have to be places. And the one thing that gave it away was the Dave Orchard transcript. He wrote a paper in 1976. He was interviewed in 1976 at the University of Coahuiltecan. Said that he was there in 1924 when the Poncas were passing through, and that they were stopping at 4 places. And the last one was near the Blue Hole, the most important one. And I said, okay, I knew at the time that there was at least 4 springs along the Camino Real, or the places that they were talking about. So all I had to do was do a little thinking and a little researching, and there they were, the 4 fountain springs. And I looked it up on Bruin and Bessie. Each one was a fountain spring. There's no question about it. But that wasn't my first discovery. My first discovery was learning that Enchanted Rock there was a moon goddess in the painting, and she's decapitated. Well, her decapitation takes place at Enchanted Rock, and Enchanted Rock becomes the moon. And the void on her neck is the devil's sinkhole where moonlight comes overhead. That aha moment was just really wild, really, really wild. But it all happened through experience and observation. Yes, ma'am?
So, in that celestial map, you showed Iridenus, which is Iridenus, which is what we're fighting at Brackridge Park.
Yeah,
So
this is Austin, San Marcos, New Braunfels, and San Antonio. This is the constellation of Iridenus right here. And the reason why it sits below the line of the ecliptic, and in this case, it's not the line of the ecliptic, ladies and gentlemen. This is the horizon, because when this painting was painted, Iridenus was still beneath our southern skies. Does that make sense? It wasn't visible to the Tejano 2,000 years ago. Most of it was still below the horizon. You could see it more in Mexico. So they were very clever at that time when they were doing themselves, they were being sincere and saying, we'll put Iridenus down here porque todavía no se ve acá. Does that make sense? So those southern skies 2,000 years ago have finally moved northward to where we can see them now and tell stories. Incidentally, Iridenus had not been in our skies, okay, for 12,000 years. But they knew that those stars would eventually make it this far north. We have evidence that when the Tlaxcalans and the Spanish came up this way, that they were following the southernmost star of Iridenus right here. As that star migrated northward from Mexico this way to Texas, they were following that movement. And when that star was finally arrived where you could see it in San Angelo between the buttes, I mean, you could just barely get a glimpse of it. It was in 1757 when the missions were being established. So there was, if I may, there was already a migration of native peoples moving this way. The bandits just happened to hitch a ride. Their conquest of the Americas wasn't as so deliberate as they make it out. They were following us and our movements to our sacred places, to our way of life. They hitched a ride and took advantage of what they could, and we took advantage of them. You know? Any other question? Yes, sir.
And you mentioned the underworld, and could that be like a spiritual realm, more or less? You said the upside down. A lot of people talk about the underworld. First Nations people they also talk about the good spirit.
Yeah.
Is there a connection there?
Yes, let's just say academically, yes. You know, this painting and Mesoamerican cultures,
Like underworld.
there's generally an underworld, but it's anywhere where it's cold, wet, dark, black, wet. Did I say wet? Nighttime,
The spiritual equivalent.
perhaps. I'm not a spiritual person, so perhaps. I just say perhaps. You know, the mother's womb, the new moon,
Yeah.
the new moon. ¿Qué más? You know, that black hat you're wearing.
That's why it's documented in Mission Concepcion, prison Concepcion.
Yes.
Conception.
Yeah, Gary, also, as a reminder, you know this, is that 4 springs, they're all connected underground.
Right.
So they've done all the testing where they put the dye or whatever they do
Uh-huh.
back in the day.
Mhm.
So I've been down in a cave out by Bernie, I forget the name of the caverns. Where you pay to go down, and there's a little cutout in the wall that you look through, and there's about this much water flowing north. And that is the water that makes all 4 of those springs.
Is that cave without a name? Cave without a name?
No, it has a name, I swear.
It's a cat.
It's out by Bernie. Out by Bernie.
So that is part of Yanawana, spirit waters, mother water. That is the connection of really of the springs and why this mural is there as well, and why this eclipse is taking place as well.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
And this the connection with Juan Diego. And
Halley's Comet was in the sky.
Mhm.
How do you miss something like that in history? Well, you do it, I beg your pardon, you do it deliberate.
Was the Virgin the comet?
No, let me say, I can't say specifically. I can't say that, but I'll tell you this. Every 532 years, all of the astronomical things that take place that constitute Bonanzi or the Virgin of Guadalupe appear. So Bonanzi appeared in 997. She reappears in 1531 and then given the name Virgin of Guadalupe. And she's due back in 2060. 2060 with the rearrival of Halley's Comet. You get me?
60?
60. Just look up the next time Halley's Comet's up in the sky. Okay? I won't be here, pero look it up, and if you can get a Starry Nights program, go to 1531, look at the skies in 2061. They're the identical same skies.
And the sparkles that are around her depiction
Uh-huh.
are those are what's seen in the sky when Halley's Comet comes by.
Could be, but I'll tell you this. What it is Halley's Comet and its tail has a lot to do with the effects that you see.
La cola.
The tail that has its effects. Very, very, very. Kelton, did you raise your hand? Or just be quiet? Anybody else, folks? I can really, if you need specifics, I can give you more specifics without giving too much away. You're very welcome to ask. Yes, sir.
My questions for our mission Indians, are we gathering or meeting anywhere on that day, or
Which
is
day?
anything been planned? Like, I heard we're meeting here at San Jose, Mission San Jose.
For the annular eclipse?
Yes.
Yes, Mission Sunset.
Mission. And is there a time, or has that been decided?
I'll post that on Facebook.
What was your
Yes.
question, Mom?
Yes, you said to ask you in the middle of the break, before break, about the 2 lights at the.
Oh.
While he's answering that question, is there anybody else that did not fill this out? Just so that I can go by and catch, get your information.
Well, the eclipse is taking place, this year's eclipse is taking place in Virgo. The light that's hitting, the Assumption of Mary is hitting Mary, the Virgin. To make an analysis between the two is generally telling you that first light it's telling you the eclipse is going to hit in Virgo. And by the way, when the light shows up on Virgo, or the Ascension of Mary, and then the second light's on the floor, that's a straight line all the way out the door. To our peoples, that is the ecliptic of the sun. Right? Remember the following eclipse in 2077, the twin? The twin? Everybody remember that? The second one? It appears below Virgo. So the Assumption of Mary's here, right? And the light's hitting her here, and then there's another light down on the floor, correct? That's the next constellation that the eclipse is going to take place in. It's telling you. It's going to move from here to here in 54 years. That's what it's telling you. You know, our ancestors did this stuff deliberately. And I'll tell you what, Carl, please forgive me. Give me a second. As I did this research, I realized that our ancestors were afraid that they weren't going to make it. Yeah, they were being smart. They were being clever. They were hitting the Spanish head on. No. Cabron. You're not gonna come in here and run roughshod all over us. We will dictate how this is gonna turn out, and it's gonna turn out in our favor, or we'll overwhelm you and just kill you all. There had to been a deal. And so I believe that when you look at the evidence and you read history and blah blah blah, you think, God, they weren't too sure if this was all going to turn out all right. So they promised to themselves that they would put these missions out there like they did and leave evidence behind of what their experience was and what was still yet to come 300 years down the road. They told themselves, if we don't make it, at least these buildings will. And then 12 days later, 12 days after the eclipse, the planets line up along the skies like the mission. Yes, that was their plan, but folks, this is the White Shaman mural is a 2,000-year-old painting. I got with the astrophysics department 7 years ago, and we looked at this work. The White Shaman mural is a 4,295-year calendar. And of course, they said, okay, Gary. You know, I gave them the evidence. They said, okay, it's there, okay. Any case, the mathematics that our ancestors were using to put these missions down 300 years ago had already been sorted out thousands of years earlier. They already knew thousands of years earlier that these two eclipses, these twins, are going to come right over this way. Our brothers up north, Dene and Pueblos and these guys, they know that stuff too, man. They know that. Let's not think that us South Texas native peoples, we live in a vacuum. Yeah, in a historical vacuum. We've been placed in a historical vacuum. But there are tribes up to the west of us that know these very same information. They just don't tell you. Because they're trying to keep what happened to us from happening to them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
You probably talked about this when I was gone, but just in case, did you mention to them the figures that are right outside Mission Concepcion's door?
No.
And what that means?
No. I didn't.
Will you? Sorry, guys.
Yes, Carl.
Yeah, so each mission here in town has a planet connected to it.
That's correct.
And so last time we spoke, we talked about the animal connected to it, to each building, each mission. Like San Juan, my family's mission is a Vanal. It's a deer.
Yeah.
Correct?
Sure.
So the other ones, what were they?
Well, look, let's put it into I'll tell you like this. So Saturn, or Mission Espada, okay. Espada is what? What's that in Spanish?
Sword.
A sword, right? That sword or that spear or that point is associated with the god in the east. The god, let me pull it up real quick. That's a great question. We have to answer it. Okay. This guy, Saturn, Espada, you see how this arrow right here in his left hand is pointing towards a spear in the deer's heart? What kills the deer ultimately in our creation story is the sun, the warm sun, stabs the deer in the heart. This is the sun with an atlatl, and the atlatl is killing the deer, the morning star, Venus. This is Saturn, the spear. What's the head of an espada? A point. You get me? That's why I call it espada, because it's associated with Saturn, the warm sun that killed the deer in the morning. I'll add to that. Historically, when you're at the Alamo, let's say I'm standing on top of the Alamo, and it's winter solstice, and the sun is rising over here. I'm looking west. Sun is rising in east, and the sun's going to come across the sky over the Alamo, and it's going to set over that corner of the building right there. This is winter solstice, and you're standing on top of Mission Valero. I said Valero. That direct line, when the sun sets over there, way on the other side of the right, there's a direct relationship between the mission and where the sun set. Okay? That other side of where the sun set is where the mission sat before it came here. Mission Solana. That direct line. You with me? There's a straight line. Where the Alamo sits today and where it sat all those years ago. By the way, my families were being baptized not too far from there at San Fernando de Austria, in the little town there where the Alamo sat. That straight line. Okay, so back to Mars. The Mars is associated with death, war, the underworld. You get me? It's the cold sun. So when the sun, on the setting sun, like Boyd's interpretation, that means you're dying. That means you're going away. That means you're going to the underworld. Okay? What's in that line between where Solana sit in Coahuila and where I'm standing is San Fernando number 1, where people who fought in the Alamo died and are buried. Did everybody understand what I just said? Mm-hmm. San Fernando number 1 is that direct path of the setting sun. During this eclipse, if you're standing at the Alamo and the sun sets after the eclipse that day, the straight line goes through San Fernando Cathedral, where David Bowie's remains sit. Okay? There's a relationship between where there are burials related to Mission Valero, the god of death and war and the underworld. You know, even the Texians incorporated that into, and the Spanish incorporated into their design of the city. So there was, I'm sure that, in my opinion, so there'd be some consistency here. Then this kind of thinking was around for 10,000 years, right? So let's try and get in on some of that so we can enjoy some kind of success here. Let's go along with this indigenous people, because we need them on our side for one reason or another. Let's go along with them just as much so we can get somewhere. I would have done it. You know, to me, anyway, the Alamo is more than just the Alamo. It's a god that represents war and death and the underworld. And in cemeteries. Anything else? Okay.
You were naming the missions compared to the animals?
Oh, the animals, okay, but that's right. The mission I associated, San Juan is associated with the deer, but Saturn is the warm sun, Venus is the deer, Jupiter represents Mother Earth, Mercury represents the moon, and Mars represents, I'm confused. Espada is Saturn, San Juan is Venus, San Jose is Jupiter, Concepcion is Mercury, and the Alamo is Mars. Alamo. But animals, no animal associations. I don't remember ever associating each mission with an animal. Only San Juan. Only San Juan.
What's associated with the letter?
What's associated with Valero?
Yeah.
Mars?
War.
The setting sun?
War.
War? The setting sun? Yeah, war, Mars. Yuppers. By the way, you see, remember there's twins? There's 2 eclipses coming 54 years later. There's the second one right there. And the other way we were able to find this particular sun, this eclipse that's coming, is there's a straight line from here to here, all the way up to the top of the painting, right up here. And if you can barely make out a nose and an open mouth and a chin and a neckline here, can y'all catch that right there? That's Nueces River. If you got a phone, look up the Nueces River. It's a woman's face. And the annular eclipse, the trajectory, the back of the trajectory of the annular eclipse puts it right behind the Nueces River. I know I've mentioned that before, so I don't have a problem. But that's how we zeroed in on this particular eclipse. It's the trajectory path along the state of Texas. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned the cycle is like 300 and something years. What did you call it? You said it was 1691 to today, this year. You said that.
Yeah, there are repeating cycles where these things take place. I'll give you one example. I'm going to answer that question indirectly, but I'm going to give you a good example of it. The next eclipse that takes place is going to take place in Pisces. The total eclipse is taking place in Pisces. The last time you had an eclipse take place in Pisces in the exact same spot was in 1940, April 7th. 1940. April 7th, 1940, clear across Texas, right over San Antonio. You with me? This eclipse returns back to the very exact same spot, exactly 84 years later. So there's a relationship between the moon and its repetitious return, back to the same spot, roughly 84 years. So these are things that our ancestors could predict easily within a generation or two. That's nothing. You can't do that with the Red Sox. You know? Or the Dallas Cowboys for that matter.
Hey.
Calmate. Yes, ma'am.
So, I guess my question would be, so using this, the missions and your work with the white shaman, would you say that these missions would be maybe temples or monuments? We should see them as temples or monuments?
That's a great question, Matilde. I would see them as monuments to. Okay, yeah. She asked if we should see these buildings as temples or monuments. You could do both. Professionally speaking, they appear to be, and I believe that they are monuments to our ancestral gods, the first journeymen through the universe in space and time, which are the 5 visible planets. Because if we have, by the way, guys, we're using Starry Night Celestron, we're using NASA Solar Calculator, we're using all of the big calculation tools, thank you, Master, tools, and looking back in time and gathering all that information, you begin to see these patterns, and like, oh my gosh, I was there, I wasn't there, I wasn't even born yet, my mom was there, you know. And they're repetitious. That's normal. And when you look at the evidence about these annular eclipses, 300 years ago wasn't a long time ago. It wasn't. It's recent compared to the thousands and thousands of years it took to compile all this information. You know? And here's the last thing I want to say about that. We weren't the beggars and running from the Apache, looking for shelter, God save us. We weren't those people coming into these missions. We had a plan. We were ready to deal with the Spaniard and the Franciscan. We were ready for him. Okay? History likes to write us off as poor and destitute, when in fact we were astrophysicists, mathematicians. We had it all.
Colleges, before the word was even thought of.
Yeah.
Colleges.
Yeah.
Indian ears.
Indian ears. We had it all, man. But we didn't spend our time on trying to build on that. It was satisfactory enough for the hunter-gatherer, because this hunter-gathering way of life kept you on your toes. And by the way, every time a civilization has fallen anywhere around the world, it's the hunter-gatherers that put everybody back into mode again. Yes, sir.
Wait, wasn't that the books? That was their school?
Yeah.
They learned from that, like
Yeah.
you said.
Yeah.
That was sufficient for them.
So once again, Margot, where's Margot? There you are. I really would like for you all to take this in and realize how incredibly brilliant our ancestors were, and how they worked all of this out for themselves. And own it, please. Not me. You can take a picture of me, take it home, turn it up, or set it on fire if you want. But this data is more important. It's more important to science. Our ancestral science. Our ancestors had their own sciences. Geography, astronomy, math. That still isn't accounted for in Texas history. Or in the world for that matter. But now that we're World UNESCO, doesn't that make us more World UNESCO? I don't want to be World UNESCO because the conqueror wrote the history about what happened to us. I want us to be World UNESCO because we had our own science, we have our own methodologies, we had our own buildings with monuments to our gods. That's what needs to be taken away from this, and I'm asking you, please, take that into consideration. Yes, ma'am.
So to go with what Matilda was saying about should they be monuments, and to go with what you're saying, we have to remember that when the missionaries came, the Catholics came, they took what we already had and gave it a Catholic name and identity.
Right.
So even they understood all of this.
You had to have. If you were going to cooperate with us, you had to have understood about what we were talking about, taking advantage of it and say, ¿sabes qué? Estoy de acuerdo. Estamos de acuerdo. Yeah, we agree to disagree, but agree to go ahead and leave well enough alone, but turn it into something big and massive and impressive. And I mean, come on, we all have egos. The Spanish had egos taller than the Greeks, man. They believed they were gods themselves, you know. And so I could see where we were cooperating more with them than what history writes. Yes, ma'am.
Right, so I guess one of the things too that I like to point out is like the double illumination that takes place on August the 15th. I mean, that's been going on more than 300 years. That doesn't change. So I think, I mean, I've been going for like the last 4 years when I learned more about the missions, but I would want to see more mission descendants or more indigenous people, you know, just acknowledging and taking a moment because of what's happening there. You know, I know there has always been like a disconnection. I mean, I was there, you know, because my family came from Central Mexico, but at the same time, you know, I wanted to know more about these missions and, you know, kind of retell a different history. So that's been kind of part of my research of doing more into the missions, and I've learned so much that I think as indigenous people or the people here in San Antonio, we need to look into that. So, you know, hopefully the next generation can just pick up from here, you know, and just continue to do more of the research, you know, about these missions, you know. And like I said, when I learn more about, I look at them as temples or monuments just because there were so many people buried there. So they knew where to bury themselves. You know, all the way from Almost Basin to Brackenridge to the golf course to, you know, throughout this river. You know, we're not just talking about you know, we have something so much here in San Antonio that I think it's time to start, you know, looking into that, and whatever stories you have, I mean, record them, however, but leave something behind for the next generation, your grandkids. One of them will eventually would want to pick that up and know that history or know that story.
So, and this, yes, yes?
Oh, I just want to build on your comments about the Catholic Church and the Mission Indians, was that, this story reminds me of something in parallel with the Pueblos of New Mexico, is that when the Spanish first came in the original conquista of like the New World, is whenever they took over these Pueblos in these villages, they let them practice their religion. And so when you look at, say, places like, the best one I can think of is Acapulco Pueblo, is that when you look at their cathedrals and their graveyards, they put themselves in, they put their culture and everything into that. And these Pueblos practice their religions until the Inquisitions happened. These priests let them practice and worship God however they wanted, but then finally, whenever the Inquisition happened, that's when they finally buckled down and started saying, you gotta worship God in our way, a European way. And so that's what drove them to take their prayers underground to the Kivas. And
Right.
Yeah, and just like that, we, at least the northern tribes, took those practices and turned them into the today's Native American church. And one last thing, forgive me. I would also like this, not to just look in the past and say, hey, we were brilliant scientists. What I really would like to do, ladies and gentlemen, and I mean this humbly, I'd like for us to embrace their work and their research and their math and try and pull ourselves away from today's indigenous stereotype. That stereotype does not serve Mission Indian descendants' purpose. It does not serve you whatsoever, at all. Okay, the most famous Paiute chief in the United States, his name is Melvin Milo. Melvin Milo is Comanche. He's the one that comes down every year and drags us all out there to do his work. He runs this ceremony, TP ceremony, Paiute ceremony, and he's a Methodist minister, by the way. I'm Catholic, so I don't mind. He runs his ceremonies in unlaced tennis shoes, sweatpants, and a white t-shirt. And he's Comanche, and he speaks his language clean, full-blooded Comanche. And he doesn't, when he goes into that ceremony and it leads us all in prayer, he's not a stereotype. Am I making sense? Please, let's break away, let's help use this information to break away from the stereotype. Otherwise, people, I'll tell you this for sure, as a researcher and a published one, they won't take you seriously under that stereotype.
No, that's right.
They won't. They're going to look at you like just another dog and pony show. I'm serious. Thank you all, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for this amazing presentation. I think we all learned a lot. And this is our story, right? And so, to Matilda's, comment, this is why the San Antonio Mission Indian Descendants Group does what we do. Because right now we see a lot of people from my generation, right? But we've got younger generations coming, and we want to be able to continue to do that, right? We want for our younger kids to start learning their history, the history that was taken away from us, our culture, our traditions. We want to be able to gift it back to them. So that is why we do what we do. And, we're not going to have another presentation, but October the 8th, we will be celebrating our 1 year as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It's been a godsend to us because we've been able to do this, for you all. So thank y'all. Thank y'all for your support. Thank you for coming out and being here all the time. I especially want to thank you know, Paul and Joanne, because they've been some of our greatest supporters from the very beginning. But Alice is one of us. Alice is a mission Indian. She's a mission Indian. But, you know, Paul and Joanne have come out just about every single presentation, and they've been supporting us, and so I want to thank them for
By
that.
the way, the wonderful pictures that you'll see on our Facebook page, all, yes, it's courtesy of all.
So all of you should have received your eclipse glasses. I want to thank the Space Science Institute for giving those to us to be able to gift all of you. Use them on the eclipse on October 14th. Keep them because you can use them again in April for that eclipse. So once you're done, don't chunk it. Just keep it, okay? They also sent us other goodies. I know a lot of you have children and grandchildren. Go see Rachel. She's got all the little stickers and everything that NASA sent and the Space Institute sent. Get some of those stickers and take them home to your grandbabies and your kids, okay? We do this every month free of charge for you guys. And everything comes out of our own personal pockets. So if you want to contribute in any way, see Rachel. I'm sorry, Rachel, I'm putting everything back there to you. If you want to order t-shirts, the sign-up sheet is back there. If you want to, for those of you who are in attendance who want to become friends of the missions, San Antonio Mission Indian Descendants, or join as a member of the San Antonio Mission Indian Descendants, we have applications in the back. If you don't, private message either Margot or I, and we'll email you an application.
Also want you guys to take a few minutes and turn around and look behind you. When we started doing the presentations, we were a small group. And look at the size we are now. Every month it has grown. I don't think they have an area where there's 3 rooms. This is the largest that they have.
It's scary,
So-
that is.
The Guardian of the Galaxy.
It's an old joke. But anyway, it's because of you guys coming in and supporting us through these presentations that we continue to grow. We appreciate every single one of you. We appreciate Eric always brings us ideas. Thank you so much. But any of you guys, if you have any suggestions on things you would like to see, it is true, we are already full for next year.
And already starting to plan for 2025.
Precisely.
Wow.
So if you've got any ideas on presentations, drop us, send us something either through Messenger or Facebook, whatever works for you, and we'll jot it down somewhere.